The office of Alexander Reed was a fortress of glass and steel, perched high above the Manhattan skyline. Every morning at precisely 7 a.m., he walked through the gleaming double doors of Reed Industries, the multinational conglomerate he had built from the ground up. His employees, clad in sharp suits and practiced smiles, greeted him with respect, or was it fear? At 42, Alexander was a man who commanded the world with cold efficiency, his success chronicled in Forbes and whispered about in boardrooms around the globe. Today was no different. He sat behind his obsidian desk, the expanse of his empire sprawled before him. His fingers glided across the screen of his tablet, approving acquisitions and dismissing competitors with a flick. Power, that was the essence of his being. Yet despite the billion-dollar deals, the accolades, and the opulent life, an emptiness gnawed at the edges of his consciousness. He buried it deep beneath layers of control, dismissing it as weakness. His assistant Evelyn Chen knocked softly on the glass door. Her voice, always measured and professional, broke his reverie. "Sir, this package arrived for you," she said, setting a small cardboard box on his desk. "It doesn't have a return address, but it seems personal." Alexander glanced at the box, plain, unassuming, his name scrawled in handwriting he hadn't seen in over a year. His jaw clenched, and a flicker of something unidentifiable crossed his eyes. "Leave it here," he ordered, his voice devoid of emotion. Evelyn nodded and departed, her heels clicking rhythmically against the marble floor. Alexander's eyes returned to the package. He knew who had sent it even before he reached for the blade in his drawer to cut through the tape. He hesitated, a rarity for him. A name whispered in his mind, like a ghost. Clara, his ex-wife. They had divorced exactly a year ago to the day. Their relationship had unraveled spectacularly, the details plastered across tabloids for the world to dissect. They had been the golden couple, Alexander, the powerful CEO, and Clara, the free-spirited artist. Oil and water, people had called them. But for a while they had made it work, until the fractures became irreparable. The knife slid through the tape, and the box opened with a soft rustle. Inside, a simple envelope lay atop a neatly wrapped item. He picked up the envelope, his hands steady, though his heart raced. The scent of jasmine, faint but unmistakable, wafted from the paper. Clara's scent. The memories surged unbidden. "Focus," he commanded himself. He unfolded the letter. "Alex, it's been a year. Maybe you've forgotten, or maybe you've chosen to. I haven't. I know you probably won't understand why I'm sending this, but I hope you'll open it. Really open it. Clara." Her handwriting was as elegant and effortless as she was. He set the letter aside and peeled back the wrapping on the item beneath it. When the paper fell away, a gasp escaped his lips before he could stop it. It was a painting, one of Clara's, but not just any painting. The canvas depicted the two of them standing on the cliffs of Big Sur, the wind in her hair, his hand in hers. The memory hit him with the force of a tidal wave. It had been their anniversary trip. He remembered the feel of her hand, the way she had laughed, utterly unguarded. The sky in the painting was a swirl of sunset hues, oranges, pinks, and purples. But there was something more. Tiny cracks split the canvas, almost invisible, but they fractured the image like a spiderweb of regret. He gripped the frame, his knuckles white, his vision blurred. A year ago he had walked away from this, from her, from a life that was messy and unpredictable, but real. He had convinced himself it was the right decision. Logic over emotion, structure over chaos. But staring at the painting, a lump rose in his throat. His eyes stung, and before he could steel himself, a tear slid down his cheek. For the first time in years, Alexander Reed cried. The sharp buzz of his intercom shattered the moment. He blinked, the mask of control snapping back into place. He cleared his throat and pressed the button. "What is it?" "Mr. Reed, you have the quarterly investors' call in 10 minutes, Evelyn's voice said. "Cancel it," he said. The words shocked even him. He had never cancelled a meeting, let alone one of this magnitude. "Sir," Evelyn's confusion was palpable. "Just do it," he snapped, then took a deep breath. "Please." He placed the painting carefully back in the box, his mind a tempest. This package was more than just a piece of art. It was a question, a challenge. Have you really forgotten? He hadn't. The memories had simply been locked away, gathering dust behind the walls he had built. Hours passed, the city below turning to a sea of twinkling lights. Alexander hadn't moved. The office was dark now, save for the glow of his computer screen. He clicked open his email, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. He typed out a message to Clara's old address. "Clara, I got the package. He stopped. What was he trying to say? That he missed her? That he regretted it all? The words were elusive. He deleted the message, his jaw tight. Emotions were a liability. He had learned that the hard way. And yet, the silence of the office pressed in on him. The city outside thrummed with life, but he felt completely alone. The painting sat on his desk like a silent accusation. Suddenly his phone buzzed. A single text message flashed on the screen. "Unknown number. Did you open it?" His heart pounded. It had to be Clara. His fingers shook as he typed a response. "Yes." The reply came almost immediately. "Then you know what to do." What did that mean? His mind spun. He stared at the phone, his heart hammering. Then, with a sense of clarity he hadn't felt in years, he grabbed his coat and walked out the door. Alexander's footsteps echoed through the underground parking garage as he approached his sleek black Aston Martin. He slid into the leather seat, the door closing with a muted thud. The silence inside was palpable, the weight of the painting and the text message pressing against his chest. The words on his phone screen seemed to glow with an intensity he couldn't escape. "Then you know what to do." Did he? The cold, calculating part of his mind screamed at him to dismiss it, to focus on his empire, his routine, the life he had built after the divorce. But another part, a quieter voice, whispered of a different path, one he had left behind, one he might still find again if he had the courage. The engine roared to life and he drove out into the New York night, the city's neon lights reflecting off the windshield. He didn't know where he was going, but his hands seemed to steer the car on their own. The hum of the tires against the asphalt was hypnotic, and before long, he found himself pulling into a familiar street. Clara's street. He killed the engine and sat there, staring at her brownstone. The curtains were drawn, warm light seeping from the edges. He used to know every inch of that place, the creaky step on the porch, the way her kitchen always smelled like cinnamon and paint. His fingers curled around the steering wheel, the leather creaking under his grip. What was he doing here? He hadn't seen or spoken to her in a year. What right did he have to just show up? His phone buzzed again. Another text. Unknown. Number. "Are you there?" A chill ran down his spine. He looked up at the house. Was she watching him? He typed a response with unsteady fingers. "Yes." A pause. Then, "Come in." His breath caught. For a moment he considered driving away, pretending none of this had happened, but the ache in his chest wouldn't let him. He stepped out of the car, the cool night air biting at his skin, and walked up the steps to her door. He knocked softly, the sound almost lost to the night. The door opened and there she was. Clara. She looked different. The same, yet different. Her auburn hair was shorter, curling around her jawline. Her eyes, those eyes that used to see right through him, held a guarded warmth. She wore a simple sweater and jeans, her feet bare against the hardwood floor. For a moment, they just stared at each other, the weight of a year's silence hanging between them. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi," he replied, his voice rough. "Come in." She stepped aside, and he walked into the house that had once been his home. The scent of jasmine and paint greeted him, and memories flooded his senses. He swallowed hard. The living room was just as he remembered, cluttered, vibrant, alive. Her art supplies were scattered on the coffee table, a half-finished painting resting on an easel by the window. He noticed the small changes. A new rug, different throw pillows, but it still felt like her. She motioned for him to sit, and he lowered himself onto the couch. She took a seat across from him, her hands clasped in her lap. "You got the package," she said. "Yes." He hesitated. "Why now, Clara?" She took a deep breath, her fingers tightening. "Because I needed you to see what we lost. What you lost." Her voice trembled slightly, but her eyes remained steady. "I thought I could move on, but I couldn't. Not until I knew you understood." He looked down at his hands. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he said quietly. "For both of us." "Did you?" Her voice was sharp, a blade honed over a year of silence. "Or was it just easier for you to run, to control everything and everyone except your own emotions?" Her words cut deep because they were true. He had run. The moment things got messy, complicated, real, he had chosen the safety of his empire over the uncertainty of love. I don't know how to fix this, he admitted, the words bitter on his tongue. Or if it even can be fixed. Clara's eyes softened, the anger giving way to something more fragile. I'm not asking you to fix it, Alex. I'm asking you to feel it, to let yourself feel something other than power and control. He looked at her, the woman he had loved and lost, and for the first time, the walls around his heart began to crack. The emptiness he had been carrying wasn't a void. It was grief, regret, and a yearning for something he had buried too deep. "Why did you send me the painting?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She smiled sadly. "Because that day in Big Sur was the last time I saw you truly happy. I wanted you to remember what it felt like to be alive, to be vulnerable, to love without conditions." He closed his eyes, the memory of the wind on that cliff, her laughter, the feel of her hand in his crashing over him like a wave. When he opened them again, his vision was blurred. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Clara reached out, her fingers brushing his hand. "I know." They sat in silence, the years of hurt and misunderstanding swirling around them. For the first time in a long time, Alexander didn't feel the need to control it. He let the emotions rise and fall, like the tide. Finally, she spoke. "I don't know if we can go back, but maybe we can." He looked at her, hope flickering in the shadows of his heart. Of domesticity disorienting him for a moment. He was on the couch, a light blanket draped over him. He sat up, his joints stiff from a night of restless sleep. The memories of the previous evening trickled in slowly. The raw conversation with Clara, the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, they could find their way back to each other. But now, in the harsh clarity of daylight, doubt crept in. Had he made a mistake by coming here? By opening old wounds that might never heal? The faint sound of clinking dishes drew him to the kitchen. Clara stood at the counter, her back to him, steam rising from a mug in her hands. She turned as he entered, her eyes catching his. There was no hostility there, and only a tentative peace. "Morning," she said softly. "Morning." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I didn't mean to stay." "It's fine." She smiled a little. "You looked like you needed the rest." He nodded, unsure of how to respond. They stood in silence, the gulf between them still vast, but not impassable. He noticed a stack of mail on the counter, some envelopes opened, others discarded. A postcard peeked out from the pile, its bright colors incongruous with the muted tones of the kitchen. He caught a glimpse of the Golden Gate Bridge. "You're going to San Francisco?" he asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. She hesitated. "Yeah. There's an art residency there. A gallery wants to feature some of my work. I've been thinking about it for a while." He felt a pang in his chest. Of course she was moving on. Why wouldn't she? She was free now, free from his rigidity, his inability to bend. "When do you leave?" "Next week." The words hung in the air like a death knell. He felt his window of opportunity closing, the fragile chance of reconciliation slipping through his fingers. He clenched his jaw, fighting the panic rising within him. "Alex," she said, her voice gentle, "I didn't tell you to hurt you." "I know," he replied, though it felt like a lie. He didn't know what he had expected coming here. A clean slate? Forgiveness? A second chance handed to him on a silver platter. He should have known better. "Do you want some coffee?" she offered, changing the subject. He nodded. "Sure." She turned to pour him a cup, and for a moment, everything felt almost normal. He watched her move, the graceful way she navigated the small kitchen. He used to know every detail of her routines, every nuance of her expressions. Now he felt like an outsider peering through a window. As she handed him the mug, her fingers brushed his. The contact was brief but electric. He looked up, meeting her eyes. Something unspoken passed between them, a shared longing mixed with fear. "Clara," he began, his voice tight. "I don't want to lose you again." Her eyes softened, but sadness lingered there. "I don't know if we can fix this, Alex. I don't know if we're supposed to." He swallowed hard, the bitter coffee scalding his tongue. He wanted to argue, to tell her that they could rewrite the past, that love was enough, but he knew better. Love hadn't been enough before. A knock at the front door broke the moment. Clara frowned, setting her mug down. Excuse me. Alexander watched her walk to the door, tension knotting in his stomach. Something felt off. He couldn't explain it, but a sense of dread crawled up his spine. She opened the door, and a man stood there, tall, dressed in a dark suit, his face unreadable. "Ms. Foster?" the man asked, his voice clipped and professional. "Yes," Clara replied, her brow furrowing. He handed her an envelope. "You've been served." Her face went pale. The envelope trembled in her hands as she stared at it. "What is this?" "Legal notice," the man said curtly. "You have 20 days to respond." Before she could ask more, he turned and walked away, his shoes clicking ominously on the pavement. Clara closed the door slowly, her fingers still clutching the envelope. Her eyes were wide, confusion and fear etched into her features. "What is it?" Alexander asked, stepping forward. I don't know." Her voice shook. "It's from Reed Industries." His blood turned to ice. "What?" She ripped open the envelope, her hands fumbling with the paper. She unfolded the document and scanned the contents. Her eyes filled with tears. "It's a lawsuit," she whispered. "Your company is suing me for breach of contract, copyright infringement. They're claiming one of my paintings violates your intellectual property." He felt like the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. "That's not possible. I didn't authorize this." "Then who did?" Her voice cracked, anger and betrayal boiling to the surface. She thrust the paper at him. "It's your signature, Alex, right here." He took the document, his vision blurring as he stared at the scrawl of his own name at the bottom of the page. It was his signature, or at least a perfect forgery. His mind raced. He hadn't signed this. He knew he hadn't. But someone in his company had. Someone with the authority to act on his behalf. "I didn't do this, Clara," he said desperately. "You have to believe me." "How can I?" Her voice was cold now, the warmth of the morning shattered. "This is exactly what you do, isn't it? Control, dominate, destroy anything that doesn't fit into your perfect world." He shook his head, panic rising. "No, I swear, this isn't me. I would never—" "I can't do this again, Alex," she interrupted, her eyes glistening with tears. "I can't go back to that life, always wondering when the next blow will come." She turned away, her shoulders trembling. He reached out, but his hand fell short, the distance between them an uncrossable chasm. The walls were closing in, the life he had desperately tried to reclaim, slipping through his fingers like sand. He had to fix this. He had to find out who was behind this betrayal. But first he had to leave. "I'm going to make this right," he promised, his voice breaking. "I don't know how, but I will." She didn't respond. He turned and walked out the door, the sunlight blinding him as he stepped onto the street. The world outside was the same, but everything inside him had changed. He had come here hoping for redemption. Instead, he had found a conspiracy, and it was only beginning. The door to Reed Industries opened with a hiss of pressurized air, but to Alexander, it felt like stepping into a war zone. The sterile, gleaming lobby, usually a source of pride, now felt cold, like the heart of a machine grinding him down. He stalked across the marble floor, his footsteps sharp and precise, each step fueled by rage and desperation. "Mr. Reed," Evelyn Chen called from the reception desk, her eyes wide with alarm. "The board is—" "Not now," he snapped. He could barely hear her over the rush of blood in his ears. He bypassed the elevators and took the stairs 2 at a time to his office, his mind spinning. Who did this? Someone had weaponized his company against the woman he loved, and they were going to pay. He stormed into his office, the glass walls vibrating slightly from the force of the door slamming behind him. The skyline loomed beyond the windows, the city sprawling beneath him like a kingdom he no longer controlled. He dropped into his chair and activated his computer. His fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up records, authorizations, emails, anything that would give him a thread to follow. He knew every contract that crossed his desk, every deal, every signature, and yet someone had slipped this betrayal past him. The lawsuit against Clara was real, but it was wrong. His eyes narrowed as he examined the digital signature on the document. The date and timestamp caught his attention. It had been authorized 2 days ago, when he'd been in a meeting with the European investors. He hadn't even been in the building. His jaw tightened. Someone had forged his signature. "Evelyn!" he barked. She rushed in, clutching a tablet to her chest. "Yes, Mr. Reed?" I need to know who had access to my digital signature in the last week, he said. Every login, every clearance, now. Evelyn's fingers trembled slightly as she pulled up the data. She was loyal, perhaps the only person left in this building who truly was, and he could see the fear in her eyes. But she trusted him enough to do what he asked. Her face paled as the information popped onto the screen. It was Richard Sterling. Alexander's stomach dropped. Richard Sterling, his chief legal officer, a man who had been with the company since its inception, a man he had trusted implicitly. He snatched the tablet from Evelyn's hands, the evidence glaring at him. Richard had accessed his digital signature, using it to authorize the lawsuit against Clara. Where is he? Alexander's voice was a low growl. In the boardroom, Evelyn said. They're waiting for you. There's talk of removing you as CEO. The word struck him like a physical blow. He had built this empire, sacrificed everything, including his marriage, to make it what it was, and now they were turning on him. His hands clenched into fists. Not if I get there first. The boardroom doors swung open with a bang, startling the gathered executives. 12 pairs of eyes turned to Alexander, some filled with guilt, others with cold calculation. At the head of the table sat Richard Sterling, his silver hair neatly combed, his eyes sharp behind rimless glasses, the picture of corporate poise. Alexander, Richard said smoothly, we weren't expecting you. I'm sure you weren't. Alexander bit out. He strode to the head of the table, his glare fixed on Richard. Explain to me why my company is suing Clara Foster. Richard's expression didn't flicker. It's a legal matter. Her painting infringes on our intellectual property. Our property? Alexander interrupted, his voice like a whip. The painting is a memory, my memory, one that has nothing to do with this company. Richard's jaw tightened, a vein pulsing in his temple. Your personal life has no place in business, Alexander. Your key distractions have been compromising this company. The board agrees it's time for a change. Alexander's eyes swept the table. Some of the board members looked away. Others met his gaze with steely resolve. Betrayal had seeped into the very foundation of his empire. This isn't about Clara, he said, his voice low and dangerous. This is a coup. Richard's lips curled into a thin smile. Call it what you want. But Reed Industries needs leadership focused on profit, not sentimentality. Alexander's fists clenched, but he forced himself to breathe, to think. Richard wanted him to lose control, to lash out and prove the board right. Instead, Alexander straightened, his calm, but edged with steel. You think you can take this company from me, he said. You forged my signature, you manipulated the system, and you used the woman I care about as a pawn. Richard's confidence faltered for the briefest moment. I'll take this to court if I have to, Alexander continued. You want a public scandal? I'll give you one. Fraud, conspiracy. Let's see how the shareholders feel about that. A murmur of uncertainty rippled through the room. Richard's eyes narrowed, the facade cracking. You have no proof. Alexander held up the tablet. I have all the proof I need. Logs, timestamps, access records. You're done, Richard. Silence. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. The tide was turning. Richard's face twisted in fury. You're making a mistake. No, Alexander said. I'm finally making the right choice. He turned to the board. I built this company. I've made mistakes, but I won't let corruption destroy everything I've worked for. If you stand with Richard, you'll go down with him. One by one, the board members looked away from Richard. The balance of power shifted. Richard stood abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. This isn't over. Yes, it is, Alexander said coldly. Security will escort you out. 2 guards appeared at the door. Richard's face was a mask of rage as they led him away. The doors closed behind him with a finality that echoed through the room. Alexander took a deep breath. The storm had passed, but his work wasn't done. He pulled out his phone and dialed. Clara answered on the second ring, her voice wary. Alex? It's over, he said. The lawsuit. The betrayal. I fixed it. There was a pause. And what about us? He swallowed hard. That's up to you. But I want to try. I want to get it right this time. Silence stretched, and then she whispered, Me too. Relief washed over him. For the first time in years, the future felt uncertain, and he welcomed it.